Thank you everyone for being here. It's good to see faces and names of our members. We're really excited to have our program today. Looking at time, we'll go ahead and get started. If you're able, some people are eating their lunch. Don't be shy to do that on camera. This is a close-knit group. We'd love to see your faces if possible. I'm Tiffany Armstrong. I am the president of our AFP Western North Carolina chapter. There's a few board members on here as well. And I just want to say thank you to them and just acknowledge the work that our volunteer board is doing behind the scenes to get these programs set for the year. Philanthropy Institute, we just had a board meeting and we heard updates about Philanthropy Institute coming up in July. It's going to be fantastic. So just keep an eye on the website. Our programming this year, just as a reminder, we're doing a varied schedule. Our programs will always be on this same Wednesday once a month, but we'll have some virtual, some in person. We'll have some breakfast, some lunch, some after work social time. And we're going to have all of that on our website soon for the year. We won't all have our speakers all announced yet, but we will have the times. And we're going to remind you all year to just be checking for that next month where we're meeting and what time. We want to meet as many needs as we can of our membership. And make that schedule flexible for everyone. So thank you for being here. I'll go ahead and put a plug in for next month, actually. So next month, March 15th, we will have a program. It will be our first in-person of the year. The venue will be announced shortly, but it will be at the same time, 11:30 lunch program. It's going to be bring your own bagged lunch. So bring whatever you want. And we're going to gather and network in person. And we're going to hear a program by Dr. Fox, who among many other things, in fact, I can't wait to put the bio up on the website because it's so incredible, all of the accolades and all of the history. But among other things was department chair of business administration at AB Tech University for 30 years, has been college, and for 30 years has been a community college instructor. But stay tuned so you can get the entire download on Dr. Fox. But the presentation is going to be to build a foundation of the understanding the terminology in which we move an organization forward in our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. And it's going to be such a robust discussion really around the terminology, how it's changed, how it is changing currently. How do we address those elements into our organization successfully? So stay tuned, March 15th. Registration will be open shortly on the website. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you for adding into that, and for Edie for helping us to connect to Dr. Fox as well. Today, though, also an incredible program. We're really proud of how our programming is shaping up this year. We are thrilled to have Annie Fritschner with us today. Annie is an ACFRE, and those are few and far between. We're very proud of that. She is a past president of this chapter, and she currently serves on the AFP Global Board, Foundation Board. She has a 30-year career in nonprofit, in fundraising, knows a little bit about everything, has always been involved in this organization, and she has a special heart for the next generation of fundraisers and wants to give back in any opportunity she can. And she has chosen today to give back with a wonderful presentation about gift acceptance policies. So I will turn it over to you, Annie. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm so glad to see everybody here. And I love seeing your faces. And yeah, even though you're eating, Becky, it's okay. But anyway, yeah, no, I'm just so glad to be here with you. Thank you very much for having me. And our topic today is so relevant. My friend Wilson sent something the other day, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I don't know if you saw today that Elon Musk is giving almost $2 billion worth of Tesla shares to a charity. And it's like what we want to talk about today is how to prepare for all those gifts, because, you know, Western North Carolina is changing and people are moving into our area from other places because they love our lifestyle, they love our hospitality, they know who and what we are. But these gifts, I think, are going to become more frequent to our organizations. I don't think that Tesla's the Tesla stock example is irrelevant. I think it's very relevant because some of the people who are moving here have been working at these places, and you may be confronted with that. And it sounds great. Who doesn't want $2 billion? Well, I don't know. Let's talk about whether or not you want it. So anyway, I'm going to share my presentation. Things were a little wonky this morning, but let's see if we can make it work. Let's hope. And I also want to just tell you, please participate through the chat box, because I want to hear what you have to say and what's going on in their lives. So let's see. Oh, look. Okay, good. So today we're going to talk about what a gift acceptance policy will help you do, the difference between a gift acceptance policy and a gift recognition policy, because although they're very similar, there's a little bit of difference. I want to talk about how a gift acceptance policy can get you out of very sticky situations. And I want to hear about yours too. Also just want to talk about how to get your board more engaged in this, because for some of your board members who don't want to fundraise, this can be a very easy way for them to participate in new ways. So if you'll use the chat box, I'll try and get mine up. And just feel free to please mute yourselves too while you're snacking on your sandwiches. So big, 30,000 foot idea. So there are only three purposes of contributed funds, right? There's the annual fund, there's capital, and there's the endowment. And I know this is very basic, but it's kind of important because although you may say, well, we fundraise for programs. Okay, well, that's annual. But there are really only three purposes, but there are many forms of gifts, right? So I say M1 is your friend, cash. A lot of us actually don't take cash anymore. Maybe you do take cash, but it's an interesting concept. I attended the chapter presentation on crypto, was completely flummoxed by the entire topic, didn't understand a whole lot of it. And then of course the crypto market just, I don't know what happened, but I think it's kind of fallen apart. But some people give different forms of gifts, right? Real estate, tangible personal property. So just if you want to speak out, to go off mute, what else does your organization take? What other forms of gifts do you all take? Hello?
I'm worked for an organization that's taken cars, but I gave my car to an organization once.
Yeah, okay, so cars, right? Okay, so I'm seeing in-kind contributions. Yep, bequests. Okay, so this is very interesting. Stock transfers, okay. So here's the thing though. The gift, the methodology is like, maybe you do take PayPal, maybe you take Venmo, maybe you don't. But the gift itself is a little different. So for example, sorry, going backwards. So you might take life insurance, you might take real estate, but then how do you take it? Yep, real property. So like a bequest is a methodology, right? And the bequest may come in the form of cash, and it may be for annual funds, right? So I think it's important in our own minds when we're thinking about a gift acceptance policy, we think about clarifying what do we take, how do we take it, and what purpose we take it for. For example, your organization is having a charity fundraiser. You might take somebody's grandmother's, your gift of your grandmother's pearls for that, right? But you might not take the grandmother's pearls to fund an endowment. You might, but you might not. Does that make sense? So I think it's important that you are clear about how you take gifts, what you take, and what you take them for. Any comments or thoughts about that?
will you speak more later at some point about
There you go. Someone gave us a cat.
that's an interesting concept, like the not just taking them, but what you take them for.
Yeah.
Would you say a little more about why we wouldn't use Granny's pearls for an endowment?
You might, you might not. So what I want us to walk away with today, and if there are 30 of you on this call, I want you to understand that there should be 30 different unique plans, gift acceptance policies. There's no right one. There's no wrong one. There's no right length. There's no right anything about it. It's important that it's unique to your organization, but that there should be some fundamental concepts involved in each one. So you might accept Granny's pearls for an endowment, but you might not. And it doesn't make it wrong. It doesn't make it right. It just makes it unique to you, so that when in our day, and in the old days when it was Mike Wallace knocking at your door saying, "Why are you doing this?" You can handle the any kind of challenges or authority that might come to you. Okay, it's really important. So the gift acceptance policy is going to clarify the intersections of what you take, what you'll take it for, and how you'll take it. Okay. Plus, I think it should be sort of a twofold approach, which is the worst case scenario building and the best case scenario. And the worst case is one that we'll talk about, where a donor sues you because you took their name off the building. And the best case is, here's how we're going to take Granny's pearls. Here's who has to evaluate them. And here's what we're going to use them for. And it's all up front. Okay. So a good comment. The point is, we don't want donations to become the tail wagging the dog in our organizations. Absolutely. That is exactly the issue. Okay, so what are the practicalities of what we're talking about? Number one, I think that your gift acceptance policy should include who and what you are, and your principles, your ethics, whatever the more moral compass about your organization and its approach to philanthropy. And it needs to be approved by the board and dated. Now, many of you all may have this kind of policy, which is great, in which case you just want to revisit it. Some of you may be creating it out of whole cloth. And frankly, there's some really great ones that you can get on the internet. So like if you want to look at what your college institutions was, or maybe you all can share with each other. I just pulled Harvard's just a little bit, but I really liked what they had. Because they have a visual commitment to why they accept gifts, what their intentionality is, how to avoid conflicts of interest, and the alignment issue, which is so important. So for example, I worked at a church once, and we got gifts from just went out of my head. Oh, from Chick-fil-A. And one person who was on the leadership team thought that we should not be accepting gifts from Chick-fil-A because of their accusations about the way they treated a certain segment of the population. Now, whether that was true or false, I don't know. And whether or not we should or shouldn't accept them was a great discussion point. Because it made us think about, does it matter where the money comes from? And you and I have been in so many classes that Ethics 101, the first question is, does it matter if a drug dealer gives you money? Well, does it matter? Does it matter? Your answer and your neighbor's answer may be completely different depending on your organization. Does this make sense to you? Any comments or thoughts people want to share?
One of the questions that I might have is, how much time would you put into learning about a new organization? Are there some common criteria that you find are easy to search for. So for an organization that isn't as well known as Chick-fil-A, for instance, and you might not know what they stand for, we've tried to research just through some basic questions. We'll do an online search. So if the gift seems to come out of nowhere, we feel like we've done a due diligence. But is there a strategy to really make sure that due diligence is meeting the criteria and is valuable for the organization?
Great question. Who wants to respond to that? I think that's an awesome question. I think it's really hard to know the history of everything. And, frankly, it's really difficult because no matter how far down you dig, there's a point at which the website says we are ethical and we determine our ethics by an internal board of our own ethics people. So it's like, I did about 10 hours of research on Levi jeans, and are they really made ethically? And then I kept going through the firewalls, and it's like at the end point was, yeah, we are as ethical as we say we are. It's like, okay, well, that doesn't help me. So it's a great question. Who else wants to respond to that?
I'll give a real example from the history of Riverlink. Riverlink is a small conservation organization here in Western North Carolina, based in Asheville. It's been here about 35 years. We recently, of course, we've made our name in working to protect the land and the water for the French Broad River, water quality and health of the watershed in general, including the land. And we recently had there was a national plastics professional association that was going to be having its annual meeting here in Asheville, and they wanted to make a gift. They called us and said, we'd like to make a gift to your general operations, and we would really appreciate it if you would make an announcement that we've made this gift. And they wanted the public relations blessing, maybe a little bit of greenwashing from a well-known local conservation organization. And so we had this internal conversation, and it involved all the staff at a staff meeting with a couple board members sitting in on a Zoom. And it's not like we had criteria that we could polish up and apply to every situation, but we had a very full conversation. It took about an hour to decide that we were going to accept that gift, but that we weren't going to promise to give them maybe some of the bigger PR. We certainly weren't going to do a press release. We weren't going to do big, fancy public announcements about their gift. We reserve those big public announcements for gifts over a certain level. It's got to be at least 25,000 for us to really do a press release and a full court press. And the gift they were giving was less than that, so it provided a means for our executive director to tell them, thank you so much for your gift. We are so glad you're interested in water quality and in our mission. And here's how we handle gifts of this size. And thank you again. It was just very contained because we'd thought about the gift levels in advance, and we had a response.
Perfect. Great example. Thank you so much for sharing that. And this is where I think that our gift acceptance policies and the gift recognition policies also begin to align a little bit, because you had a gift recognition policy, whether it was written or not, that said at $25,000, here's what you get, check, 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 check. And they didn't fulfill that. Therefore, they weren't going to get what they had asked for. So you were all clear on that. Whether the ethics of whether to accept that gift or not maybe was a new conversation. And all a gift acceptance policy does is help you have those conversations in advance of the gift coming to your door. So that this is exactly where they intersect. So for example, you're going to say that your gift acceptance policy may say, we do sell your name, we don't sell your name. We're going to acknowledge your gift in a certain amount of time. You all know this is a fuzzy copy of the Donor Bill of Rights. Some of you have this posted in your lobbies. Some of it is the backside of your donor receipt. But this is a great place to start having conversations with your board members, if you haven't had one, about which one of these matters to you most, and are we acknowledging this, and then voting on an annual basis to continue to commit to the Donor Bill of Rights, because as a member of AFP, this is what you as a practitioner and I as a practitioner, we stand by. And so I think that this is a great, again, it's a great opportunity to also talk about in capital situations or in larger situations, what do you give away? What is considered marketing? versus a purely philanthropic gift. For example, sometimes we have sponsorships. Well, what do you get as a sponsor that you don't get as a donor? Does $1,000 sponsor get something more than a donor does? And if so, why? What is the distinction? How do you make those distinctions? The result was that Susan said that they did accept the gift, but they also limited the amount of publicity that they gave for the gift.
And
So
by the way, we told them, you know, in the conversation before the gift arrived, we could tell them, here's what we do for gifts of this size. And yeah.
Right. And being upfront about that and being transparent and upfront is so important, I think, to the alignment of who and what you are as an organization. I'll give you an example, another real life example. I worked on a campaign with Wilson when Party Hospital went with the Four Seasons Hospice at the time, and they built 2 buildings together. They built Elizabeth House, and then they built what was then Hendersonville Health and Rehabilitation. Well, part of the rehab piece was sold off to another organization. And so I walked in one day, I was seeing a patient, and I walked in, and the naming plaque, which it, cost however much, a few $1,000s to get all those donors' names etched into glass, and it's a very beautiful plaque, was laying against the hallway floor. And so I went to the manager and I said, so what's up with this? And he said, well, we're a new organization. This is from the previous organization. And so it's like, I thought to myself, if I had been a $10,000 donor to that organization, to that capital campaign, and there's the plaque with my name on it or my family's name laying in the hallway, which is one step to the dumpster, how would I feel about that? Who said they could take that down, and what kind of negotiations was about that? So these are the things that actually happen in our world. And so we want a way to have the conversation, it seems to me, prior to. And then the next piece is also then planning for the worst case scenario. So one of the things that is really important, I have seen this done, again, it was another hospice organization received a gift of a condo up in Highlands, and they were so thrilled. It was a small hospice organization. They needed the money. They were excited about this. Well, the gift came during a housing downturn. The seller couldn't sell the condo and had been trying, we found out, for a couple of years. In the meantime, there were huge HOA fees, which the hospice was going to have to pay if they were going to accept the gift. So the gift wasn't quite as gorgeous as it turned out to be. But it looked on the surface, ooh, this is great. This is such big news. This is so great for us. We've never had anything like this. And so I do think it's important that you all think through what are some of the restrictions that you want to place on a gift. So for example, in large institutions, and maybe some of you have this experience, like art, I'm giving you, my granny's Van Gogh. Well, I don't know if it's Van Gogh or not. So you have to have a donor value as opposed to the organization, because art valuations can cost a lot. What do you all do with stock? Do you have a policy where you sell it, where you keep it? What are you going to do with your $2 billion worth of Tesla? Do you keep that? Do you sell it? What's the situation? Anybody want to share some of their experiences with these things?
We do not have a policy regarding brokerage accounts, but we did implement a brokerage account within the last 2 years because we had donors who wanted to make those donations. And we, within our financial policy, deemed that we would liquidate immediately. So as soon as the stocks were received, we would make that move, but we did not convey that to the donors, which sort of begs my question, which is great advice to include it in the gift policy. But when a donor makes a gift to the organization, and just like the contingency that was mentioned regarding the plastic company, how in depth should our gift acceptance policy be about requests from the donors about how the funds are used, especially if they're coming in as unrestricted sources of funding?
So the question is, did they want it? Were they okay with it going for unrestricted, or did they want it to be restricted?
So in our case, it was coming in as unrestricted, and more so I meant like that ask that the plastic company made, like, okay, well, now we want promotion. So I think Riverlink handled that beautifully, but how in depth should our policies be? Like if a donor is giving an unrestricted gift and we know it's unrestricted, but then they make an ask like that. I mean, is there language that can be used in conjunction with these certain issues, like stocks will be sold within X amount of days, and unless otherwise, noted that these are considered unrestricted gifts to the organization? Does that make sense?
It does. And I think you're asking a really important question, because frankly, I think as practitioners in the modern age, we should have a clause that says, that we are going to, if the gift is restricted, I want it to be used for athletes, whatever. I think that we should have a line in there that says something that protects the organization and its mission, that says, should the donor's values not be able to be realized for a period of X amount of time, 2 years, a year, whatever, 5 years, that the gift will be completely unrestricted or something like that, so that the organization isn't hampered. And as has been mentioned, the tail's wagging the dog. Who else wants to chime in on this? It's such a great question.
Can I just make a couple of comments? Over
Yeah.
the years, this is cynical, but it sure has proved true. And that is, whenever anybody has offered me a building, a house, whatever, you understand that they can't sell it. So that's probably the reason that we're getting this building. And the strictures in the gift acceptance policy have to be very clear that the donor has to pay for the appraisal. The donor has to pay for the environmental phase 1. And so that's one thing. Annie, you've got here this thing, art must be valued by the donor. There's nothing like being at a university with an art department, and your art student 10 years ago offers you a painting which is valued at $350,000. Well, we have to be extremely clear that the IRS only allows the deduction for the materials that went into making the painting, like $6. And that we are not agreeing with the donor's appraisal. So if a donor says this is worth X, that's fine, but we have to, our letter back has to say, thank you very much for your gift, which you are valuing at X, because, or else don't say anything at all, because the donor's taking his or her own risk with the IRS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, obviously you and I have been in situations where we've been burned and it's expensive. And so I think what's helpful is when your gift acceptance policy is printed, or you have it, and frankly, if it can be shared on the website, it's not like everybody's going to run to go see that link, but that you have it so that it's very clear and upfront. Here's what our policies are. And that we're going to stand by IRS guidelines, et cetera, et cetera. I think this is so important so that you don't find yourselves in a bad situation. Because it's not, I believe that everybody wants to give out of purity of heart. And I think 9 times out of 10, they do want to. It's just occasionally you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're receiving something that really isn't the gift that you want it to be. You maybe have to say, we are not able to accept that gift because we cannot commit to your needs as a donor being fulfilled. And there's ethics, and there's compassion in being upfront about that, as opposed to taking the thing and locking it in the closet, and then all of a sudden someone stumbles upon it. Wilson sent me a really great piece. You know, obviously we're all dealing with statues going bad and, you know, everything changing. And let's see, Wilson, I don't know if I have it up here. But are you on, Wilson, that you could share it with us? So I took a photograph of it. It's interesting. I just happen to be a World War II buff, and so this link is nothing that you need to go to per se, but it's about how foundations like the Braun Family Foundation is giving a lot of money. And the question in Germany is, should it be received when the Braun family were very instrumental in the death of so many people during World War II? Who decides that the Robert E. Lee statue is going to be taken down from the university? Wilson, you want to share your latest news piece?
I'm not prepared to, Annie, but it was about the University of Richmond.
And so a family had given money to the university for generations, and it had made a lot of its money from slavery. And so the university then said, well, we're going to take that name down from the buildings, and the family's now suing them for over $3 billion because they want their money back. And obviously we're seeing this in the headlines with the Sackler family. And so the Guggenheim, the Metropolitan Museum, so many organizations, National Gallery in London, have taken the Sackler name off their buildings and so on because of the opioid situation. But they're not giving the money back. And so I obviously have a very strong opinion about that. You can tell by my tone of voice, but the question is, what are you all going to do? It's not a wrong or right situation for everybody, but if you suspect that the local dope dealer is giving you $1 gajillion to sponsor the event, and everybody knows that that's the local drug dealer, and that they might be washing some money through, as has been mentioned, greenwashing, you know, how do you want to approach that? Do you want to receive the gift? Is money money? Do you not care where the money comes from, and therefore it's being transformed, and there's redemption in taking, you know, a supposedly drug dealer's money and turning it into new lives for children? Is that okay? No right or wrong answer. So what I think is really important is that you all have something called a gift acceptance committee, right? Gift acceptance committees are so important that they get to be the ones that say no to the gift, okay? So if you're getting a gift that you are unclear about, and you get to go to the donor and say, gosh, I really hope that we get to accept your gift. We're so excited. Thank you for thinking of us, and so on and so forth. We have to take this to the gift acceptance policy committee. It meets in a month. We'll be right, and we'll get back in touch with you. And then the gift acceptance committee can say, no way, Jose, or can say, yes, whatever you want. Okay, but I think a gift acceptance committee is critical for the health of your organization, because what if your organization merges? What if it ceases to exist? You know, what if it gets bought out? The example I've already used, you know, what happens to all of those named buildings, those named gifts, those named rooms? My college, my alma mater, just had a science building named from the Olin Foundation. And then it got renovated. Well, does the Olin name stay after the renovation when the Olins didn't give any money the second time for the renovation? Does it not? Do we share names? You know, it seems like these are big problems, but they're things that when you do your first capital campaign, you know, you've got to have answers to these things. Do you all have gift acceptance committees? Does anybody have one in your organization?
We have a development committee that would handle things like this.
Okay. Okay. And do you have a gift acceptance policy?
We do, and frankly, I'm here because we're preparing to update it. It hasn't been updated in several years.
Okay, I think that that's just great news, because what it does when your board looks at it on an annual basis, you make sure that it's still relevant, A, to the programs, B, to the sitting board members, C, to the situational ethics that are in the environment at the time. You know, things have changed. It used to be fine to put up a statue of Robert E. Lee. No one thought twice about it. Well, people are thinking twice. And so who's going to make those decisions? How are those decisions made? The world has changed. So it's really important that your gift acceptance committee, whether it's the development committee, that's fine. But that somebody with a relation to the board is making recommendations for the entire board to be voting on. Okay. So anything else you want to see in your policy, put it in your policy. Okay. Gifts should not cost you money. I've noticed that many of our organizations now, it's like, I want to give $100 to feed the whales. And now there's a little box that says, if you really want to give $100, please give $105.37 to cover the fees and so on and so forth of doing that. Well, that should be something that has been determined by your board on your recommendation as to whether or not that's what you want your organization to look like. Whether you don't want that, if you want to eat that as a cost of doing business. All of those things should be included in your gift acceptance policy, okay? And also anything, if you want an out clause, that should be there too. So for me, it's not real unless it's on a calendar. So the first thing you want to do is just do a draft. If you know somebody who has one, take their draft and edit it for yourself. It doesn't matter. Then get it on your board agenda for a couple of months away. Make sure that someone on your board is on your gift acceptance policy or on your development committee, obviously, and take it to them and try it out. Take it to the staff. Does it meet what the staff's suggesting? And then have a board member present it at the meeting, not you, so that it's equal, not staff to board, but board to board. And then maybe they want to think about it for a month. Maybe they want to vote on it. And then assuming that there's consent, there should be more than consensus, in my opinion. I would prefer unanimity on this, and then publish it. Okay, so it may take you 6 months. It may take you 2 months. It doesn't matter. So Jim France is saying anybody who has a sample gift acceptance policy, he'd really like to, oh, I'm sorry, Jessica, sorry, would like to see that. I know that UNCA has one. You can Google theirs. I Googled Harvard's. It's not as long as I thought it was going to be. I Googled, I think, art museums. So you can just take a look at them and see what you think. Also AFP, our library, we have a great library at AFP on the website. If you're a member of CASE, if you're a member of AHP, I'm sure that somebody has them, but the library at AFP does have them. So you can take a look at those. Okay, Lori, I'm so glad that you're here. Thanks for sharing with us. Okay, so anyway, questions, thoughts, comments? And that's me. You're welcome to text me or email me, but.
I would love if we have time to even hear some real life examples. I think Susan's example earlier was really helpful. If you or others have, some to share and it's appropriate, I think that would be great.
Yeah, Amanda, you probably have something from the university to share, I'm sure. I'm gonna exit out here so I can see your smiling faces.
Oh, I'm trying to think. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm trying to think of an example of something. Edie, you may have to jump in and help me on this.
Or Becky.
And we
Yeah.
we end up with a lot of art donated. And having because it's been with us for a while, we didn't have great valuations on it. So we've been working through that. But yeah, one of the strangest things that we have recently been donated was a person passed away and they were a collector of cookbooks. And so they wanted to donate those to our culinary department, which was kind of interesting and fascinating. And so ultimately we did choose to accept them because we were able then to turn around and have a used book sale and use those proceeds from those older cookbooks to continue supporting our culinary and hospitality program. But yeah, we get some random things just because of the vast array of programs that we have.
We got a tractor recently that we're in the process. We have to be, apparently, according to our accountant, we have to be very specific about how much it's actually worth. So it can't just be comparable to when, you know, they sold some others, but they gave one to us. It can't be how much they sold them for. Like, we have to have it actually valued.
What was it, Edie?
A tractor.
I forgot about the tractor, Edie.
Yeah, perfect. Exactly. All right. How about you, Wilson? I know you've got some good examples from your history.
I just sent one to Jessica there from the Montana Regional Library, a set of gift acceptance policies. It was, you know, like you said, they're all a little different. This one didn't have the one about, you know, if your character gets tarnished or something, we have the right to remove. You know, it was more of a structured policy and didn't get some of those gray areas, didn't address some of the gray areas, which often are the ones that flag them.
Well, those are the difficult ones. This isn't exactly related, but AFP is coming up with a fundraiser bill of rights now for us. And because there have been examples of one woman gave an example of she is openly gay, openly in that she is, and so she went and solicited somebody, and they were appalled that the institution sent a gay person to solicit them and wouldn't make the gift until somebody who met their criteria, whatever, you know, whatever, a straight person or somebody came and talked with them. And so then the institution was like, well, now what do we do? That was going to be a multi-million-dollar gift, and they want to see a, you know, straight person, not a gay person. And it's like, so what do we do with that? And it's all of these nuances of, you know, that are coming up, I think, in our world now in a ways that they have not come up before. I remember Amanda telling the story about she drove up in your used BMW, I guess it was, and the donor didn't want to talk to you because obviously you were earning too much money if you could afford a BMW. It's like, where does your organization say, halt? We're not going to accept a gift with all of these restrictions or nuances and so on and so forth. Or where do you say, sure, we'll take all forms of money and we're going to make them into glorious new resurrected life, serving the mission that we serve. Again, I don't think that there is a right answer. I think it's for every organization to struggle, but let's struggle on the front end while we're putting the policy together, not when we're confronted with the gift. Because then it's too late. Because then it's like $2 million is too gorgeous to say no to. But maybe some people morally don't want to take a gift from Elon Musk.
I have a question for everybody with experience in this. I'm here with Food Connection. And so I heard you just say, Annie, don't wait until you're confronted with the gift to have a policy in place. So we're a relatively small organization, and we've never had a gift of stocks. We've never had a gift of property. So would you recommend that as we build our gift acceptance policy, that we build it based on the type of gifts that we are currently receiving, or should we look forward and have it be all encompassing to what we could be faced with in the future?
I think that's a great question. And I would recommend phases, I think. I mean, what you're familiar with and you're comfortable with is easy to sink your teeth into. And then do take the opportunity to maybe at a board meeting, maybe you're allowed to have 10 or 15 minutes, or maybe at a development committee meeting to be on the agenda to say, okay, what if we get a gift of stock? What would we do with it? And have these conversations as ways of building up their comfort with having these difficult discussions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. That's helpful.
I'm always going to go for complete, but you can't think of everything all the time. So, you get confronted with a dozen homemade Afghans, and it's like, what am I supposed to do with these? And they want them used on the beds of the dying patients. It's like, oh, yeah. Well, you hate to say no, but on the other hand, their standards or their health values or whatever we have to consider, but we don't want to hurt the donor, because we all know that the gift of Afghan can lead to the gift of time, to the gift of a bequest. So, we are very long-term thinkers, strategic thinkers, I think, in our work.
Yeah, and I just wanted to comment on that as well, because we try to look as far ahead as we can, but we've really evaluated whether or not crypto is something we want to get into. And so even if that was common and it might be a barrier for someone who really wants to give to our organization, we don't feel equipped right now with our capacity to manage crypto. But the gift of stock was very easy for us to do, and it was more reactive than proactive. It wasn't really something we had thought about, but I would encourage you, if your organization feels confident managing that we've now received multiple stock gifts. And it's worked out really well for us. And so I think that is the question that we continue to ask ourselves, as well as the capacity and the ways in which, we want to present ourselves as we get into this more modern way of giving. For us, it makes more sense as an older adult organization to really also start putting more focus on gifts of legacy and different ways that we might look at estate giving, and working with those who might want to give through donor advised funds. And so there is a level of education and training, both internally and externally, that it takes when you start to look at new ways of receiving gifts.
Thank you, Heather. That's so helpful. I did a very evil, tricky thing, which was that I gave gifts of life insurance to 5 different organizations. And one of them, I was very intentional not to make annual gifts along with it. One of them, I did make regular annual gifts. One I made sporadic, and it was like, how are you going to treat me? How do you deal with me? Because you're small organizations, and maybe you've never received, and I'm still alive. I'm not dead, so you don't actually have the gifts. So how are you going to treat me? And their reactions were very, very, very different. But part of it for me was like to say, hey, try it. Deal with somebody who's going to give you a gift and who's declared that they're giving you a bequest. And how do you want to treat those people? And it was an interesting experiment. And yes, I did change the beneficiaries based on their behavior. So that's the evil part of me, but yes, I did.
That's good to know. And, we've been without a development person since a retirement in June, and some challenges. And so that was the other thing, like just preparing for turnover and what that means with managing donor relations. We also just were told that we were the beneficiary of a client who had property, and we weren't the executor. So we knew the property was going to be sold, and we're sort of laying in wait. And so that was a new opportunity for us, and one that we've had to navigate legally, because there's also family involved that weren't a part of that will. So it's been an interesting opportunity cost on the organization. We know that it will eventually pay off in a sum that will really benefit the community. But we've also gone back and forth with, how do we book that? What does that mean for us? How do we handle this now versus when the gift actually comes through? And, a lot of different, very specific details surrounding each individual gift.
Yeah, thank you for that, Heather. Thank you.
Annie, a couple things if I can. I don't know until this talk that I've ever really linked how ethics informs the gift acceptance policy. This talk has been a fascinating thing and all that, but would you tell us how you feel about getting the attorney on your board making the gift acceptance policy? And when I did some consulting at Pardee, they asked me my opinion, and they handed me an 87-page gift acceptance policy.
Oh,
Do we get our happy attorneys involved in all this, or do we get away from them?
I have a very clear answer on that one, Alex, and this is also why I didn't, I failed my ethics piece of my advanced certification, because I'm very clear, there's no gray on this for me. So I believe it's important that you pay an attorney for attorney's advice. When they're on your board and giving you legal advice, it can get very murky. Technically, they should not be giving you legal advice as a volunteer, and they also can't say that that's time that they want to value in any way for a tax deduction. I think you should pay somebody for legal advice, pay somebody to be your accountant, not try and get it free. I believe that this is one of the things that our organizations needs to be doing in order to be ethically correct. 87 pages seems like a lot, but that is going to be much more, I think, the legalistic perspective as opposed to the philanthropic, charitable, compassion perspective that we bring to the table. And so again, are the donors' desires aligning with the organization's mission? And can we fulfill their desires on perhaps an endowment situation on a long-term basis, the way that they want and the way that the institution wants? And that's a question that is not a legal question. So if you want to hire an attorney, pay them. I don't think they should be serving on our board for free and giving free legal advice. But I don't think that that's the only perspective. That's my answer on that one.
love what Alex said about the 87-page gift acceptance policy. And we definitely don't want that. We want something that's sufficiently flexible and general, but still CYAs, if you know what I'm saying. And I guess Riverlink is at the point where we're developing a planned giving program. It's in its infancy. It's in response. It's still been so reactive. We want to be proactive. And I guess I was wondering if there were some CYA lessons from this group, Annie or Alex, anybody.
The gift acceptance committee is really your biggest CYA piece of this, is that you always have that default group to say, I want to say yes, but I have to check my supervisor, my boss, the volunteer leaders. So that's always a big CYA one. But who else wants to respond to that? Becky, we haven't heard from you, and you're through reading, and I can see your pretty face. So tell us your experience at the foundation.
So a story that came to mind as we were talking was when we were gifted the estate of a woman that had not lived in her home for more than 10 years. And you walked into the home, the executor didn't know where the keys to the car was. There was still food in the refrigerator. Did I mention she hadn't been in the house for 10 years? Like the amount of hats that this woman had, like hats, like boxes of hats and hats, like myself and two other colleagues, we walked through this house and I thought that we were on candid camera or something, because the amount of stuff that was in this house, like it was obvious she was not coming back to the house, and no one thought about purging the stuff in the house, going through the stuff in the house. So we were like, we're not taking all this stuff in the house, like, no. And so we actually referred an entity called Sterling Auctions to the executors for them to work directly with them on the stuff in the house. And then when they put the house on the market, we would take the proceeds of the house. But it was that, like, that was the story that came to mind as you were talking, because I do get that from folks like, so what about this stuff in my house? And I feel like, you talk about the gifts of real estate, but we hear all the time, I don't have someone, like, I don't have family, I don't have someone to do this. And so like a place like Sterling Auctions, I think is one of those places that, and maybe there's others, and normally I always give more than one, but this is the only place that I know of that does this. I think that's an important place to kind of keep in mind for those gifts of real estate when you don't also want all the hats and everything else.
Thank you,
stuffed
Becky.
animals.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I know our time is coming to a close, and I just want to respect that. And just to say thank you guys so much for your work and for letting me be with you today. I am reminded that our international conference is coming up in New Orleans in April, and I'm a member of the foundation, as was mentioned. We're giving 204 people Chamberlain Scholars this year, and I can't wait to meet your Chamberlain Scholar recipient in New Orleans. And I'm so proud that our chapter actually gives additional money to help them get there and to be there, because it just makes such a difference. So thank you so much for what you're doing. And maybe we can revisit this topic in 6 months or 8 months and see how people are doing and where we are on this, because obviously there's a lot of energy around it, and I want to hear more about what you're doing.
Well, thank you, Annie, for your expertise and time today, and your willingness to share the slides. We will be getting those out to everyone. Her contact information is there. And these are good conversations for us to continue to have as a network to support each other. And we hope to see you in person at our March 15th program with Dr. Fox, again, on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and the terminology and the changes around that. It will be in person. Venue will be released soon, but mark your calendars for March 15th at 11:30. And we can network and continue these conversations in person, as well as reach out to one another and reach out to our board. If there is something you need, we can help you find it in the AFP library or through a colleague and network. That is such the benefit of being a member of this organization. Thank you so much. I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
I want the hats, Becky. I want the hats. Bye,
Thank you,
guys.
everyone.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you. Keep working hard. Thank you.